The prisoner's voice cracked the silence of the frozen cell block. "Don't talk." But what she had seen couldn't stay buried. Hello family, if you're ready for the full story, make sure you hit subscribe, and tell me in the comments where in the world you're watching from. Tomorrow, I've got another story that will blow your mind, and trust me, you don't want to miss it. Now, let's dive in. In Alaska's coldest prison, a convict's secret would decide whether the police lived or didn't. The snow fell in thick, merciless sheets across Anchorage, swallowing the prison in silence. Frost clawed at the windows, and the steel doors groaned as though tired of guarding broken lives. Inside, the cold didn't just live in the air, it lived in people. She sat on the edge of her narrow bunk, chin tucked into her chest, her fingers tracing the worn tattoo on her wrist. It wasn't the kind of ink people asked about. It was faded, scarred, like her. Around her, the cell block hummed with whispers and shouts, but she kept her vow, don't talk. Her name was Riley Vaughn, 28 years old. A black woman with deep brown skin and eyes that seemed to hold storms. 4 years into a sentence that felt like a lifetime. She hadn't spoken more than a handful of words since she arrived. Silence was armor. In this place, words could be twisted, sold, or used to cut you deeper than fists ever could. Silence kept you invisible. But silence also made you lonely. Across the icy yard, another figure moved with practiced heaviness. Deputy Nathan Cole, Alaska State Trooper assigned to the prison rotation, walked the perimeter with shoulders squared and jaw locked tight. His breath fogged in the air, disappearing into the snow as if the world swallowed his presence. Nathan wasn't young anymore, mid-30s, lines etched deeper by more than just weather. To the other officers, he was reliable. A man who didn't waver. But inside, Nathan carried a silence of his own. His wife had left 3 winters ago, tired of competing with the job, and his only son lived with her in Juneau. He told himself it didn't matter. He told himself duty was enough. But every time he returned to his empty cabin after a shift, the silence pressed like a weight on his chest. 2 lives. One locked by bars, the other by duty. Both convinced they had nothing left to give. That night, the storm rattled the fences and drove inmates restless in their cells. Riley leaned against the concrete wall, eyes sharp, watching. Most guards assumed prisoners watched each other out of boredom. But Riley's gaze wasn't idle, it was survival. She noticed the small things others missed. A guard's nervous twitch, an inmate's coded glance, the way hands brushed too long when something passed between them. And tonight, she noticed something that froze her blood colder than the Alaskan air. 2 inmates in the far corner exchanged not just glances, but a folded scrap of paper. The slip disappeared under a mattress in one seamless motion. The guard pacing nearby didn't see it. No one did. But Riley did. She caught the flash of ink, the way one man mouthed tomorrow. Her breath hitched. Secrets in prison weren't unusual. But this one felt different. Dangerous. And for the first time in years, Riley's silence trembled. Meanwhile, Nathan's radio crackled with static as he stepped into the main corridor. He paused, scanning faces. Hardened. Hollow-eyed. They all blurred together for him, criminals locked in cages. He didn't notice Riley's sharp gaze on him, didn't realize she saw what he missed. Their eyes met briefly across the cell block. Just a second. She looked away fast, pulling her knees to her chest. Nathan frowned. Something about her stillness gnawed at him. Most prisoners filled the silence with noise, cursing, singing, scratching graffiti into the walls. But Riley sat like a shadow, watching, waiting. And for the first time, Nathan wondered if her silence wasn't emptiness, but knowledge. Outside, the wind howled like a warning. Inside, two broken souls, one convict, one cop, were on a collision course with a secret that would test everything they thought they knew about trust, justice, and love. If you were Riley, would you risk speaking up in a prison where silence is the only shield? Or would you protect yourself, even if it meant others might suffer? Share your thoughts below. The storm had worsened by midnight. Wind howled through the cracks of the old Alaskan prison like a wolf trying to claw its way inside. Snow piled against the outer doors, making escape impossible even if anyone dared. But inside, the cell block wasn't any warmer. Fear had a way of turning breath to ice. Riley sat hunched on her bunk, the wool blanket wrapped tight around her shoulders. Her eyes kept straying back to the far corner where she had seen the note exchanged. Most of the women had settled into restless sleep, but a few whispered, their voices low and sharp as broken glass. Riley could read them without hearing. Fear, anger, expectation. Something was about to happen. Don't talk. The words pulsed in her skull like a drumbeat. It was the rule she had lived by since she was 14 years old. Her mother used to tell her, "Silence keeps you safe, baby. Let your eyes listen, not your mouth." Growing up in Southside Chicago, that advice had saved her from the wrong kind of attention, from cops who never believed her, from men who wanted her weaker. But now, her silence was starting to feel like a prison inside a prison. A sudden shout broke through the block. "Lights out, ladies." The guard's boots pounded down the corridor, flashlight beam cutting through the bars. Riley lowered her head and pretended to sleep. The beam lingered on her for a moment before moving on. When the block finally sank into stillness, Riley's eyes flicked open again. Across the way, one of the women slid off her cot. Another followed. Their shadows moved quick, practiced, like rehearsed choreography. A mattress lifted, the note retrieved. She couldn't see the words from here, but she caught the way they huddled together, nodding like wolves plotting a hunt. Her stomach twisted. Something wasn't right. Meanwhile, Deputy Nathan Cole leaned back in his chair at the monitoring desk, sipping coffee gone bitter from sitting too long on the burner. The storm outside crackled over the radio, dispatch warning about power lines down on the edge of town. He rubbed a hand over his tired eyes. Nights like this stretched forever, a battle to stay awake against monotony. That's when the camera feed caught his eye. He squinted at the grainy black and white screen showing Riley's block. Two women were moving when everyone else was down. One bent toward the floor, the other shielding her with her body. His jaw tightened. Cole grabbed the intercom phone and clicked on the speaker for the block. "Cell Block C, back in your bunks. Now." The two women froze, glared up at the camera, then slunk back to their beds. On the way out, Nathan raised a brow. He couldn't remember the last time he'd heard her speak. "Something you want to say?" Silence. Her jaw tightened, eyes darting to the cameras above them. "You've been staring holes through the block for days," he said. "If you're seeing something, better say it now." Her chest rose, fell. She could almost hear her mother's voice again. "Don't talk." Finally, she whispered, "They're planning something." Nathan's eyes narrowed. "Who?" But she shook her head, lips pressing shut again. Fear rippled across her face like a shadow. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Vaughn, if you know something and you keep it quiet, people could get hurt. That includes you." Her throat worked. She wanted to tell him about the note, about the whispers, about tonight. But the eyes of the yard were everywhere, and in this place, words could be a death sentence. So all she said was, "Watch tonight. Just watch." Then she stood and walked away, leaving him with a knot of suspicion tightening in his gut. That night, when the prison quieted again, Riley lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The weight of her choice pressed down on her chest. She had broken her own rule. She had talked. And tomorrow, everything could change. Do you think Nathan should trust Riley's warning, or dismiss it as a ploy from a desperate inmate? What would you do if you were in his place? The next morning dawned with skies as heavy as stone. Snow still blanketed the ground outside the prison, but inside, the air was sharper, brittle with suspicion. Riley moved quietly through the motions of breakfast, but her skin prickled with unease. The moment the words had slipped from her lips, "They're planning something," she'd felt her chest cave in. Talking had never saved her before. Talking had only branded her a liar, a troublemaker, a criminal. Now she couldn't shake the feeling that eyes were on her. At the far end of the cafeteria, two women from the night before sat together, their laughter too pointed, their gazes too sharp. When one leaned close to whisper, Riley caught the faintest glance in her direction. Her stomach dropped. They knew. Somehow they knew. She pushed her tray away untouched, appetite gone. Silence had been her armor for years, and now she'd cracked it. Nathan, meanwhile, sat at the monitoring desk, reviewing the grainy footage from Cell Block C. He'd replayed the interaction from the yard over and over in his mind. She said they're planning something. He rubbed a hand down his jaw. Inmates had 1,000 reasons to stir up suspicion: extra protection, a transfer, leverage against rivals. Riley Vaughn was no different. Except, she was. She didn't beg. She didn't posture. She didn't even seem to want him to believe her. That bothered him more than he cared to admit. Still, trust was dangerous in his line of work. The moment you let a prisoner pull your strings, you became a liability. He'd seen it before. Officers manipulated, bribed, seduced into ruin. He wasn't going to be one of them. And yet, her voice, raspy, almost unused, echoed in his mind, "Watch tonight. Just watch." By midday, word had reached him from his supervisor. "Cole, you've been looking twitchy. Something wrong on your block." Nathan straightened. "No, sir. Routine." "You sure? Rumors about unrest always start somewhere." The supervisor's eyes narrowed. "If you're hearing chatter, you bring it up the chain. Don't let an inmate get in your head." Nathan swallowed. Exactly, he thought. Don't let her get in your head. But she already had. That evening, Riley sat on her bunk, staring at her hands. She remembered the first time silence had saved her. 15 years old, cornered in a foster home basement when one of the older boys tried to take what wasn't his. She had frozen, clamped her mouth shut, not a sound leaving her throat. Later, when adults asked questions, she kept the same silence. No one believed girls like her anyway. Silence was power. Now, in this place, it had become her law. And last night she'd broken it. Her cellmate, a sharp-eyed woman named Terry, smirked from her bunk. "You've been jumpy, Vaughn. Something on your mind." Riley forced her face blank. "No." Terry tilted her head. Don't get yourself in trouble. You know what happens to canaries." Riley's pulse jumped. She turned away, but the warning had sunk like a hook. If word spread that she'd talked to a guard, even just a hint, it wouldn't matter if she was telling the truth. She'd be marked. Don't talk. Don't talk. Don't talk. Later that night, Nathan made his rounds through the corridor. His flashlight beam swept over the cells, catching faces half hidden in shadows. Most looked back at him with dull eyes, uncaring. But when the beam hit Riley's face, she flinched. "Vaughn," he said quietly, stopping at her bars. She looked up, eyes guarded. "You want to explain yourself?" he asked. Her lips parted, then closed. "Last night," he continued, "you tell me something's happening. Now you're silent again. What am I supposed to do with that?" She stared at him for a long moment. Finally she whispered, "Forget I said anything." His brows knit. "Forget?" "Yeah." She pulled her blanket tighter. "You don't believe me anyway. So just forget it." Nathan's jaw clenched. Part of him wanted to press, demand answers. Another part, deeper, quieter, recognized the fear flickering in her eyes. Not fear of him. Fear of them. "You don't get to play games with me," he said finally, voice harder than he intended. "If you've got nothing, don't waste my time." Her gaze hardened. "I'm not playing anything, Deputy." For a moment, the silence between them burned hotter than fire. Then Nathan turned and walked away, boots echoing down the hall. Behind him, Riley closed her eyes. The words had slipped once. They wouldn't again. The next day passed like a storm beneath the surface. Guards noted an unusual stillness among certain inmates, like wolves crouched before a strike. Nathan carried his suspicion quietly, watching, waiting. But he said nothing to his superiors. And Riley? She said nothing to anyone. Not even when Terry leaned close during lunch and murmured, "Whatever you're hiding, Vaughn, better keep it buried. Nobody likes a snitch." Her fork slipped in her hand, clattering against the tray. Heads turned. Heat crawled up her neck. She forced herself to breathe, to chew, to keep her face blank. But inside, her chest was a war zone. She had wanted to save people. Now she wasn't even sure she could save herself. That night, Nathan lay in his patrol cabin after shift, the wind rattling the windows. He should have been asleep, but instead he replayed her words again and again. Watch tonight. Maybe she was lying. Maybe she was using him. But maybe she wasn't. He rolled over, staring at the ceiling. He hated that her face wouldn't leave his mind. The sharp eyes, the silence that wasn't emptiness but something else. Something heavier. He shut his eyes. Tomorrow, he told himself. If nothing happened tomorrow, he'd put this nonsense to rest. But what if tomorrow was too late? In her cell across the yard, Riley lay awake too, blanket pulled to her chin. Every sound made her flinch, the cough of another inmate, the squeak of boots, the rattle of keys. She had cracked her silence once. And it was already threatening to drown her. Riley regrets speaking, Nathan resists believing her, and both are caught in silence. If you were in Riley's place, would you risk telling the full truth, or stay quiet to survive? The blizzard hit harder than anyone expected. By morning, the prison was buried in white, its fences rimmed with ice, the roads leading out swallowed whole. Even the National Guard radioed warnings. All travel suspended until further notice. Inside, the storm changed everything. Prison routines depended on order, but the storm forced guards to double shifts, cut movement between blocks, and corral inmates closer together. Nerves stretched thin. And in that fragile silence, one crack could splinter the whole system. Nathan Cole had barely slept. He rubbed his tired eyes as his supervisor barked orders. "Cole, you're taking C-block detail. We're short-handed. You'll be stationed inside until the storm clears. That means eating, patrolling, and bunking down with them." Nathan's jaw clenched. "Inside. You got ears, don't you? We don't have the manpower to rotate everyone out. You'll be on lockdown duty with 2 others. Make it work." Nathan wanted to argue, but the look in his supervisor's eyes shut him up. Orders were orders. So that night, Nathan found himself sitting in a hard metal chair at the corner of cell block C, rifle propped at his side, the hum of fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. Every creak, every cough, every whisper pressed in on him. He hated being this close. Too exposed. And yet, one pair of eyes kept dragging his attention. Riley Vaughn sat cross-legged on her bunk, blanket draped around her shoulders, her gaze steady on him. Not defiant. Not mocking. Just steady. He broke the silence. "What?" Her head tilted, braids falling over one shoulder. "You look like you'd rather be in the storm than here." The words startled him more than they should have. He'd grown used to her silence. Hearing her speak felt like a stone dropped in still water. "Storm might be warmer," he muttered. A flicker of amusement crossed her face, small, quick, gone almost before he caught it. But it was the first time he'd seen anything close to softness from her. Hours dragged. Guards patrolled in shifts, inmates tried to sleep, but the storm rattled the windows and the tension never broke. Nathan paced the block, boots echoing on concrete, until his gaze landed on Riley again. She hadn't moved. Just sat watching. Finally, he walked to her cell. "You planning on staring holes through me all night?" Her eyes lifted to his, calm but sharp. "You don't believe me. So why are you still thinking about what I said?" He froze. She wasn't wrong. "Because it's my job," he said evenly. "No." Her voice was quiet, steady. "It's because you know I wasn't lying." Nathan bristled. "What I know is inmates manipulate. You drop half a warning, and suddenly I'm supposed to trust you? Not happening." Her lips pressed into a thin line. "Then don't trust me. Just watch. Like I told you." Their eyes locked, the silence thick with things neither wanted to admit. Finally, Nathan stepped back, muttering, "Get some sleep." But he didn't walk away as fast as he should have. Near midnight, the storm knocked out the power. The block plunged into darkness, inmates shouting in confusion. Emergency lights flickered on, red and eerie, painting the cells like blood. Guards scrambled, voices barking orders. In the chaos, Nathan spotted movement. 2 women at the far end, slipping something beneath the bars. He started forward, but Riley's voice cut through the noise. "Cole." He whipped around. She was at her bars, eyes wide, pointing. "Look." He turned just in time to see another inmate shove a makeshift blade into her mattress, hiding it in the red glow. Nathan signaled the other guards, who rushed in, yanking the woman back and tearing through her bedding. The shank clattered to the floor. Shouts erupted. For a moment, the block boiled on the edge of riot. "Lock it down." Nathan roared, his voice carrying authority. Alarms blared, steel doors slammed, guards wrestled control back. When the dust settled, The shank was in evidence, the instigator dragged off to isolation. And Riley sat back on her bunk, breathing hard, sweat glistening on her forehead despite the cold. Nathan approached her cell, pulse still hammering. Why? Her gaze met his, unwavering. Because I told you. Something's coming. And if you keep pretending not to see it, people are gonna die. His throat tightened. For the first time, Nathan didn't see an inmate. He saw a woman trying to carry a burden too heavy alone. The next hours forced them closer still. With the storm trapping guards inside, Nathan's post remained in C block, only feet from Riley's cell. She shifted on her bunk, restless. He sat in his chair, pretending not to notice when their eyes kept finding each other. Finally, she spoke again. You don't trust me. I get it. Good, he muttered. But, she said softly, you want to. The word sank deep, hitting a place he didn't want to name. He didn't answer. Couldn't. Instead he stood, pacing the corridor, as the storm howled outside like a beast at the door. By morning, exhaustion pressed on everyone. Nathan dozed in his chair, rifle across his lap. Riley watched him through the bars, studying the lines in his face, the way sleep softened his usual sternness. She didn't know why she cared. He was the enemy, the uniform, the wall. But something in her chest ached anyway. For the first time in years, Riley wondered if breaking silence hadn't doomed her, but saved her. The storm has trapped Riley and Nathan together. Trust flickers, but suspicion still burns. Do you think he'll finally believe her, or push her away again? The storm showed no signs of relenting. By the second day of lockdown, the prison felt less like stone walls and more like a sealed coffin. Tempers frayed. Food came late. Fights broke out over nothing. Guards barked orders with ragged voices, trying to keep control. Riley kept mostly to herself, but the pressure was building. She'd spent years pretending silence was enough to hold back the tide inside her. Now the walls themselves seemed to whisper reminders of everything she tried to bury. Nathan sat only feet away, on duty again, his rifle resting across his lap. He looked tired, shadows beneath his eyes. But he never stopped watching. Every time his gaze passed over her, Riley felt a spark of heat she couldn't explain. Distrust, yes. But something else too. Something dangerous. Late that night, during the lull when the block finally quieted, Nathan leaned against the bars near her cell. He didn't look directly at her at first. You saved my neck last night, he said quietly. Her head lifted. Did I? That shank could have ended up in someone's ribs. Maybe mine. He gave a wry half-smile. Guess I owe you. Riley studied him. Then believe me when I say this isn't over. Nathan's smile faded. You keep saying that, but you won't tell me more. Why? Her hands tightened on the blanket. She wanted to say because words have always betrayed me. But the truth pressed harder, demanding air. Finally, she asked, you want to know why I don't talk? Why I don't trust anyone with what I see? Nathan's gaze settled on her, steady. Yeah, I do. The silence stretched before she spoke again, her voice low and uneven. I grew up in Chicago. South Side. My mom worked 2 jobs just to keep us fed. Dad was gone before I could remember his face. It was just me and her. She used to say, Riley baby, don't talk too much. Talking gets you noticed, and getting noticed gets you hurt. Her eyes drifted somewhere far away. When I was 15, One of my foster brothers cornered me in a basement. I froze. Didn't make a sound. And when it was over, I still didn't talk. I thought if I stayed quiet, maybe it would just disappear. But silence doesn't erase anything. It just eats you alive. Nathan's chest tightened. He hadn't expected this. Riley's jaw set. Couple years later, I met a man who promised me the world. Said he'd take care of me. He gave me drugs, jewelry, a place to stay. When he asked me to carry a package across state lines, I didn't ask questions. That's what landed me here. She laughed bitterly. Accessory to trafficking. Not the life sentence you'd think when you look at me, but long enough. Long enough to learn silence is the only thing that keeps me alive in here. She finally looked up at him, eyes glistening but hard. So when I tell you something's coming, it's not for me. I don't care what happens to me anymore. It's for everyone else. You included. Nathan's throat worked. He didn't know what to say. For years, he'd trained himself to see inmates as one thing: criminals. People who'd made choices and deserved the consequences. But now, looking at her, hearing the cracks in her voice, he saw something else. A survivor. The silence stretched between them until Nathan spoke. You think you're the only one who knows what it's like to lose everything? Riley blinked. What do you mean? Nathan let out a slow breath, eyes fixed on the floor. 3 years ago, my wife packed up and left. Took our boy with her. Said I loved the badge more than I loved them. And maybe she was right. I'd missed birthdays, anniversaries, first days of school. I told myself it was all for them, that keeping the world safe was my duty. But when they left, I didn't fight. I just let him go. He rubbed a hand over his face. Now my kid grows up in Juneau with another man calling himself Dad. And I just sit here in the snow, pretending I'm still needed. Riley's chest ached at the rawness in his voice. For the first time, the bars between them felt smaller than the space inside each of them. You ever talk to him? She asked softly. Nathan shook his head. Once in a while. Cole's on birthdays. But he doesn't look at me the same anymore. It's like I already lost him. Silence wrapped around them, heavy but not empty. Riley leaned forward, hands gripping the bars. You didn't lose him. Not unless you give up. You think silence saves you, but it doesn't. It just rots everything inside until there's nothing left. Nathan stared at her, startled by the conviction in her voice. For a moment, neither spoke. The storm outside pounded against the windows, a drumbeat to their confession. Later, when the lights dimmed and the block sank back into uneasy rest, Nathan found himself replaying her words. He saw the 15-year-old girl frozen in silence, the young woman lured by promises, the prisoner carrying shame that wasn't hers alone. And he felt the echo in his own chest, the nights of silence in his cabin, the sound of his son's voice drifting further away with every call. He realized something then. Riley Vaughn wasn't just another inmate. She was a mirror. And for the first time, Nathan wondered if listening to her might be the only way to save more than just the prison. Maybe it could save them both. That night, Riley lay on her bunk, staring at the ceiling. She'd said more in an hour than she had in 4 years. She should have felt exposed. Vulnerable. Stupid. Instead, she felt lighter. Maybe for the first time, silence hadn't protected her. Words had. And maybe, just maybe, she wasn't as alone as she thought. Hearing Riley's truth and Nathan's confession, do you believe these two broken souls can really trust each other? Or will their pasts always stand in the way? Share your thoughts below. The storm raged for 3 days straight, swallowing the horizon in white. By now, Cell Block C felt like the inside of a pressure cooker, guards restless, inmates irritable, nerves rubbed raw. Yet in the middle of that grinding tension, something unexpected bloomed. It began with small exchanges. Nathan walked the rows slower, pausing by Riley's cell longer than he meant to. She noticed, of course. She always noticed. And when their eyes met, it wasn't hostility anymore. It was a question neither of them dared voice. One evening, as the storm howled like a living beast outside, Riley leaned against the bars while Nathan sat in his chair, rubbing at his temple. His exhaustion was clear, the weight of double shifts pulling him down. "You look like hell," she said finally, breaking the silence. Nathan gave her a flat look. "Thanks. Real encouraging." A small smirk tugged at her lips. "Just saying, if you drop dead in here, nobody's strong enough to drag your big self out." For the first time in days, Nathan chuckled. The sound surprised both of them. "That's funny, coming from someone who could probably knock me flat if she wanted." Riley raised a brow. "Maybe. But I'd never waste my energy on you, deputy." The banter was light, but beneath it, warmth flickered. For a few seconds, the storm, the bars, the danger, it all faded. That night, Nathan made his rounds and found Riley awake, sitting on her bunk with her sketchbook balanced on her knees. "You draw?" he asked, voice low. She stiffened, almost snapping the book shut. But something in his tone, gentle, curious, not mocking, made her pause. Slowly, she turned the page toward him. The pencil sketch was rough but beautiful, the outline of trees bending under snow, a horizon of mountains in the distance. Nathan blinked. "That's Alaska." She shrugged. "What I remember from the bus ride in." "You got talent," he said simply. Riley scoffed. "Talent don't mean much in here." "Maybe not," he said. "But it means something to me." Her chest tightened at the unexpected softness in his voice. She wanted to dismiss it, laugh it off. Instead, she said quietly, "Drawing's the only way I remember who I was before all this." Nathan's gaze lingered on the sketch. Then he met her eyes. "Maybe you're not as lost as you think." For a long moment, the bars between them felt less like iron and more like glass, thin, fragile, breakable. The following morning, during breakfast, chaos broke out over a spilled tray. Inmates shoved, curses filled the air, guards shouted. Nathan and another officer waded in, separating bodies. For a heartbeat, Riley thought fists would fly, until Nathan's hand shot up, palm open, commanding stillness. His voice was firm but steady. "Enough. Back to your seats. Now." The authority in his tone cut sharper than the storm outside. Slowly, grudgingly, the inmates sat back down. When order returned, Nathan passed Riley's cell on his way back to his post. She murmured, just loud enough for him to hear, "Not bad, Cole. Almost looked like you knew what you were doing." He smirked without looking at her. "Don't get used to it." She smiled, small, fleeting, but real. That night, the storm knocked out the heating system for several hours. Breath turned to mist in the air, and inmates wrapped themselves tighter in thin blankets. Guards cursed under their breath, stomping their feet to stay warm. Riley curled up on her bunk, shivering. She tried to hide it, but Nathan noticed. "You're freezing," he said quietly, approaching her bars. She forced a smirk. "What gave it away?" "The icicles on my nose." "Funny." He pulled a spare jacket from his own gear and slid it through the gap in the bars. "Here. Don't argue." She hesitated, staring at it like it was a trick. Finally, she pulled it into her lap, fingers brushing the fabric. It smelled faintly of cedar and gun oil. Warmth pooled in her chest in a way she hadn't felt in years. "Thanks," she whispered. Nathan nodded, pretending it was nothing. But his heart hammered as he turned away. The hours passed, and slowly, the walls between them cracked further. Riley found herself talking, really talking, for the first time in years. She told him about her mother's cooking, about how she used to dance in the kitchen to old soul records, about the foster homes, the moves, the places where silence was safer than hope. Nathan listened, really listened. And then he told her things too, about fishing trips with his son, about the cabin he built with his own hands, about the nights he sat there alone, staring at an empty chair. Sometimes they laughed. Sometimes the silence stretched deep, heavy with all the things they weren't ready to say. But always, always, they came back to each other's eyes. One night, as the storm began to weaken, Riley said softly, "You know what the hardest part about silence is?" Nathan looked at her, waiting. "It makes you believe no one will ever hear you." "Not really. Like your voice doesn't matter." Her gaze flicked to his. "But you hear me." The words hit him like a blow. He stepped closer to the bars, his hand brushing the cold steel. "I hear you, Riley." For a heartbeat, it felt like the storm inside them both went still. Neither spoke. Neither moved. The distance between them was only inches, but it felt infinite. Still, for the first time, infinite didn't mean impossible. Later, after he walked away, Riley pressed her face into the jacket he'd given her. For years she'd sworn she'd never let herself feel this again. Hope, trust, warmth. But now? Now it felt less like weakness and more like survival. And maybe, just maybe, it was the beginning of something she hadn't believed in for years. Riley and Nathan are finally lowering their guards. But is this bond real, or just a fragile illusion created by the storm? Do you think their connection will survive what's coming next? The storm broke on the fourth night. By dawn, the sky was pale and washed clean, the snow glittering like shards of glass across the prison yard. Relief buzzed through the block like static. The worst had passed. But for Riley and Nathan, the calm only sharpened the edges of what was coming. It started with whispers. Inmates side-eyed Riley, voices dripping with venom when she passed. "Snitch. Rat." The words hissed like snakes, curling around her ears, searing her insides. Terry, her cellmate, leaned in close one morning, voice sharp as a blade. "They know, Vaughn. You've been flapping your mouth to the guards. Won't be long before someone shuts you up for good." Riley's stomach twisted. She'd been careful. She'd kept her words between her and Nathan. But word traveled in prison like fire through dry brush. One spark, and everything burned. She tried to play it cool, jaw tight, but the knot of fear in her chest wouldn't loosen. Nathan noticed the shift almost immediately. During his rounds, he caught the looks thrown Riley's way, the muttered insults, the way she hugged his jacket tighter around her shoulders like it was a shield. He wanted to step in, to tell them to back off, but he knew what that would do. It would mark her. Still, his protectiveness gnawed at him. He found himself lingering too long by her cell, his eyes searching her face for cracks. "You all right?" he asked one evening, low enough only she could hear. Her laugh was bitter. "What do you think?" "Riley." "Don't." Her gaze snapped to his, fierce. "Don't act like you can fix this. You're the reason they're looking at me like this." The words landed like a slap. Nathan opened his mouth, then shut it. She wasn't wrong. The tension reached breaking point 2 nights later. Nathan was called into the warden's office. The man sat behind his desk, steepling his fingers. "Cole, I've been reviewing your reports. Interesting that you didn't mention an inmate warning you about trouble in C Block." Nathan's blood went cold. "Sir." The warden's eyes narrowed. "Do you have something to tell me?" He hesitated. Admitting Riley's role would protect himself, but it would condemn her. And yet, staying silent would look like negligence. "I received some information," Nathan said carefully. "From who?" Nathan's jaw tightened. "Can't say." The warden leaned back, unimpressed. "If you're protecting a prisoner, you're done here, Cole. Watch yourself." When Nathan returned to C Block, Riley was waiting. Somehow she knew. "What did they ask you?" she demanded, eyes sharp. His silence was answer enough. Her face hardened. "You told them, didn't you?" "No," he said quickly. "I didn't give them your name." "But you gave them something." Her voice rose, raw. "Do you know what happens when word gets around that I've been talking to you? Do you know what they'll do to me?" Nathan stepped closer, frustration boiling. "I was trying to protect you." "Protect me?" She cut in, voice breaking. "You don't get it. There's no protecting someone like me in here. You've got a badge. I've got nothing. And now you've made sure I've got less than that." Her words pierced deeper than any blade. Nathan reached for her bars, desperate. "Riley, I..." She backed away, shaking her head. "No. Don't say it. Don't make it worse." The space between them, once fragile and warm, froze into iron again. The next day, everything shattered. During rec time, as Riley walked the yard, a shadow moved fast behind her. She turned just in time to see a fist swing. Pain exploded across her cheek, and she stumbled, hitting the ground hard. Boots closed in, voices jeering. "Snitches get stitches," someone roared. She curled in on herself, bracing for the blows. "Enough." Nathan's voice cut through the chaos, sharp as a rifle shot. He barreled into the fray, dragging bodies off her, shoving inmates back with wild force. Other guards rushed in, whistles shrieking, cuffs snapping. When the dust settled, Riley sat on the ground, lips split, blood staining her chin. And Nathan stood over her, chest heaving, eyes blazing, not just with fury at the inmates, but at himself. He crouched low. "Riley. Don't." Her voice was shredded. She wiped her mouth with the back of her hand, glaring up at him. "This is what I get for trusting you." The words cut deeper than the fight had. She staggered to her feet, shoving past him as guards dragged her back toward her cell. Nathan stood frozen, heart splintering. He had wanted to save her. Instead, he had destroyed the only fragile thread of trust they'd built. That night, the block felt colder than the storm outside. Riley sat in her bunk, staring at the sketchbook in her lap, hands trembling. The drawing of the mountains blurred through tears she refused to let fall. She'd been stupid. She'd opened up. She'd believed. And now she'd been reminded painfully that people like her didn't get happy endings. On the other side of the bars, Nathan sat in his chair, staring at the floor, jaw clenched so hard it ached. He wanted to cross the space, to tell her he hadn't betrayed her, to beg her to believe him. But his voice felt useless now. She wouldn't hear it. She couldn't. And for the first time, Nathan wondered if he'd lost more than her trust. Maybe he'd lost the only chance he had left at redemption. Riley feels betrayed. Nathan feels powerless. Their bond has shattered under pressure. Do you think they can ever come back from this, or is it too late? The yard attack left ripples that spread like cracks in ice. Inmates buzzed with rumors, guards muttered about security lapses, and the warden tightened lockdown protocols. But for Riley and Nathan, the real damage wasn't visible. It was in the silence. 2 days passed without a word between them. Nathan did his rounds, eyes averted. Riley stayed curled on her bunk, cheeks still bruised, lips pressed thin. The jacket he'd given her lay folded at the end of her bed, untouched. The bond they had built, soft as snowfall, fragile as glass, was shattered. And neither knew if it could ever be put back together. Nathan sat in the guard station late one night, staring at the cold mug of coffee in his hands. His supervisor's words echoed, "If you're protecting a prisoner, you're done here." He'd spent years defining himself by rules, by the line between law and chaos. But what had it gotten him? An empty cabin. A son who barely returned his calls. And now the look in Riley Vaughn's eyes, the look that said he destroyed the only flicker of hope she'd had left. He rubbed a hand down his face, heart aching. He could walk away. Pretend she was just another inmate. Close the file in his head and move on. That's what the system expected. That's what he'd always done. But her voice haunted him. "You hear me?" For the first time in years, he wasn't sure if he wanted to follow the system, or his heart. In her cell, Riley traced the edge of her sketchbook with trembling fingers. Her lips still ached from the fight, but the deeper wound was inside. She'd let herself believe Nathan was different. That maybe, for once, someone saw her. But betrayal cut sharper when it came from someone you dared to trust. "This is what you get, Vaughn," she told herself. "This is what happens when you forget silence saves you." And yet, when the lights dimmed and the prison settled, her mind betrayed her. She remembered his laugh, low and unexpected. The warmth of his jacket. The way he'd said, "I hear you." She hated herself for it, but the memory softened something in her chest. The truth was, Nathan hadn't outed her name. She knew it. If he had, she wouldn't still be breathing. But knowing didn't erase the sting. Now she had to decide, retreat back into silence, where nothing could touch her, or take the risk of being hurt again, even if it destroyed her. The breaking point came on the third night. An alarm blared through the prison, jerking Riley awake. Shouts echoed in the corridor. Another fight had broken out in the cafeteria. Guards rushed past, boots pounding the floor. Nathan appeared at her cell, keys jangling at his belt, rifle in hand. His eyes caught hers, and for a moment, neither moved. Nathan's chest tightened. He remembered her warning. Something's coming. The cafeteria brawl wasn't random. It was a spark. And he knew if she'd seen this much, she might know what was next. He stepped closer. "Tell me what you know." Her eyes narrowed, guarded. "Why?" "So you can run to your warden again." The word stung, but he didn't flinch. "No. Not this time." She studied him, searching his face for cracks. He leaned closer, voice low, urgent. "Riley, if you don't talk, people could die. Guards. Inmates. You." His throat tightened. "I can't let that happen." Her breath hitched. She wanted to believe him, God she wanted to, but trust was a blade she'd cut herself on too many times. And yet, when she looked in his eyes, she didn't see the uniform. She saw the man who'd stayed awake through the storm, who'd listened to her story, who'd whispered, "I hear you." Her chest ached with the weight of the choice. Silence or voice. Fear or faith. Death or life. Finally, her lips parted. "There's something bigger. The shank, the fight, it's all cover. They're planning a riot. Full scale. Tonight." Nathan's pulse hammered. He wanted to ask more, to demand details, but her eyes were already wet, shimmering in the dim light. She had chosen. And in that moment, so did he. When his shift ended, Nathan didn't go home. He went straight to the warden's office, jaw set. "I've got intel," he said. The warden frowned. "From who?" Nathan's spine stiffened. "Doesn't matter. What matters is they're planning a riot tonight. If we don't act, you'll have blood on your hands." The warden studied him, suspicion sharp. "You expect me to mobilize based on your hunch?" Nathan met his gaze without flinching. "Not a hunch. A source I trust." It was the first time in years he'd said those words, and meant them. The warden leaned back, unimpressed. "You're staking your career on this, Cole." "I know," Nathan said quietly. "And I'll stake more if I have to." Back in her cell, Riley sat in the darkness, hands shaking. She'd done it. She'd broken silence again. Fear coiled in her stomach. Fear of what the inmates would do if they found out. Fear of what Nathan might do with her words. But beneath it, something else stirred. Something terrifying in its own way. Hope. Because maybe, just maybe, she hadn't been wrong about him after all. That night, as the storm clouds finally cleared outside, both Riley and Nathan lay awake, hearts pounding with the weight of what was to come. Each had made a choice. Now they had to live with it. Riley chose to break her silence. Nathan chose to believe her. Do you think their choices will save them, or doom them both when the riot begins? The warning signs came just as Riley said they would. It began with tension humming through the cafeteria like a live wire. A tray slammed. A guard shouted. A chair scraped. And then, like a match to dry kindling, the prison erupted. Inmates surged forward, fists flying, voices roaring. Guards fought to contain them, but the numbers overwhelmed. Shouts echoed down the corridors. Doors rattled as prisoners banged from inside their cells. Somewhere, alarms wailed, but in the chaos, it felt too small, too far away. Nathan Cole was in the middle of it, heart pounding, rifle gripped tight but muzzle aimed low. He wasn't about to start a bloodbath. He scanned the storm of bodies, searching, always searching for her. And then he saw her. Riley, shoved against a wall, 3 inmates closing in. Her eyes found his across the chaos, wide with fear but fierce too. She had been right. She had warned him. And now she was paying the price. Nathan plowed forward, shoving bodies aside, his voice cutting through the riot. "Move." He reached her just as one of the inmates raised a blade. Without thinking, Nathan slammed the man back, wrestling the weapon free. Pain shot through his arm as another fist clipped his jaw, but he didn't stop. He planted himself between Riley and the crowd, shoulders squared, eyes blazing. "Back off," he roared. For a moment, unbelievably, they did. The other guards were pushing in now, batons swinging, cuffs snapping. The riot broke into smaller skirmishes, chaos splintering across the block. Nathan grabbed Riley's wrist. "Come with me." She hesitated only a second before nodding. Together they ran, ducking past bodies, weaving through the madness until they spilled into a quieter corridor. Her chest heaved, blood trickling from a cut on her temple. Nathan's lip was split, his knuckles raw. But they were alive. "Are you hurt?" he demanded. "I'll live," she gasped. "But it's not over. They're not stopping." Nathan knew she was right. The riot wasn't just noise, it was organized. Someone had planned this, and unless they got control, the whole prison could fall. He pulled her into a storage room, bolting the door behind them. The small space was dark, the air thick with dust. Their breaths filled it, sharp and ragged. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Riley whispered, "I told you." Nathan looked at her, really looked at her, and nodded. "Yeah, you did." Her eyes glistened. "So what now?" His chest ached at the fear trembling beneath her words. He reached out, cupping her face gently despite the blood and bruises. "Now we fight. Together." Something broke in her then, not into weakness, but into strength. She covered his hand with hers, voice shaking but steady. "Then don't you dare leave me." "I won't," he said, and meant it. They slipped back into the corridor, moving fast. Nathan knew the layout better than anyone. He steered them toward the control hub, the nerve center of the block. If the inmates got there, they could unlock every cell. It would be hell. As they rounded a corner, two men blocked the path, both armed with shivs. Riley froze. Nathan raised his rifle, but the men smirked. "You're not pulling that trigger," one sneered. "Not with her standing there." Nathan's heart thundered. They were right. A shot here could hit her. Riley stepped forward before he could move. Her voice was low, steady, dangerous. "You think you're the only ones who know how to fight in here?" The men blinked. And then Riley lunged. She slammed into the closer man, her elbow cracking against his jaw. The blade clattered to the floor. Nathan surged forward, rifle swinging to knock the second man back. In seconds, both were down, groaning. Nathan turned to her, stunned. "Where the hell did you learn that?" Riley wiped her mouth, smirking through blood. "Silence ain't the only thing that kept me alive." He couldn't help it, he laughed, breathless, in the middle of the chaos. They reached the control hub just as 3 inmates were prying at the lock. Nathan charged, slamming one back into the wall. Riley grabbed a fallen baton, swinging hard at another. The third lunged at Nathan with a scream, but Riley's strike sent him sprawling. When the last body hit the floor, Nathan sealed the door, locking down the hub. He sank against the console, chest heaving. Riley leaned beside him, bloodied but unbroken. For a moment, there was silence. The riot still raged outside, muffled by the steel door. But in here, it was just them. Nathan looked at her, his voice rough. "You saved me again." She shook her head. "No. We saved each other." Their eyes held. In that moment, the bars, the walls, the uniforms, all of it fell away. They were just 2 people who had been broken, who had chosen to trust, and who had found something worth holding onto in the wreckage. Nathan reached for her hand. Riley. Her fingers curled into his tight. "Don't talk," she whispered, a ghost of a smile on her lips. But when he leaned in, she didn't pull away. Their foreheads touched, breaths mingling, hearts pounding. It wasn't a kiss, not yet, but it was a promise. By dawn, the riot was over. Reinforcements stormed the prison, order was wrestled back, cells slammed shut. The warden surveyed the wreckage, barking orders, his face pale. Nathan stood at the edge of it all, battered and exhausted. Riley sat nearby, wrists cuffed, guards keeping their distance but eyes wary. She should have looked defeated. Instead, she looked alive. The warden approached Nathan. "I heard you had help containing this mess." Nathan's gaze flicked to Riley, then back. "Yeah. And without her, we wouldn't be standing here." The warden's eyes narrowed. "She's still a prisoner." "She's more than that," Nathan said firmly. It was the first time he'd spoken her worth out loud. And he didn't care who heard. Weeks later, the prison was quieter. Repairs underway, security tighter than ever. Riley's role in stopping the riot hadn't been erased. Whispers followed her still, but they were different now. Not just snitch. Not just rat. Some carried something like respect. Nathan visited her block whenever he could. He never crossed the line, not officially. But when their eyes met, there was something there that couldn't be denied. One evening, as he passed her cell, Riley leaned against the bars, voice low. "You ever think about what comes after this?" she asked. Nathan paused. "After what?" She gestured at the walls. "All of it." He held her gaze. "Every damn day." Her lips curved. "Maybe silence doesn't have to be the end of the story." He smiled then, small but real. "No. Maybe it's just the beginning." And for the first time in years, Riley believed it. Not because the world had changed. Not because the bars had disappeared. But because someone had finally heard her voice, and refused to let it be silenced again. After everything Riley and Nathan survived, the silence, the betrayal, the riot, do you believe love can truly grow in a place built to crush it? Share your thoughts in the comments.
Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you would surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.